Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Rewind. Everyone is enjoying themselves, of course. So, today we are going to be talking about what would happen if each of us was Adam Silver for a day. What rule or rules and regulations would we change? And we'll just kind of see where the conversation goes. We have each kind of submitted one idea, and we're going to kind of present our own ideas, and then we're going to talk about each idea individually. So, without a further ado, beyond this was actually your this was your idea. So I want to give you right of first refusal, kind of like Jordy did. If you want to take it, or if you don't, you can explain your concept, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Sure. Why not? Let me get it out the way. I, th- I guess this came up from a discussion or something I was listening to. I think it was a podcast I might have been listening to, a few weeks ago from another show. It kind of brought the ideas like, you know what? There's everyone's complaining about, what's not right with the NBA, what's not, what's wrong with the NBA this and what's wrong with the NBA that. Overall, the NBA is actually in a very good place. But I think there is areas where it can improve. And I say, you know what? Let me throw it up to the guys if you guys would be interested in the idea of trying to, I couldn't figure out what to call it, but they kind of popped up as like, hey, commissioner for a day. What would it be like, and how do you envision at least one aspect of the NBA you think we can improve? So my this is something that's been frustrating me for a while. In this case, it's broadcasting and broadcasting rights and everything that encompasses it. That's probably the biggest thing coming around the corner in the NBA. A new TV deal is about a year away. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to set the market in this case for pretty much all sports leagues, I think, because I think the NFL contract still got a little ways to go. And it's going to be fascinating to see what type of contract with this changing world of media, where we have all sorts of things from cord cutting to streaming to obviously network versus cable is still an issue. How can the NBA improve their ratings, which in this case overall, due to dilution and all the things I mentioned, have gone down over the years. There's various reasons why. We're not in a monoculture anymore where everyone's watching the same thing on a Friday night or a Tuesday night. People got a lot of things to do, and still people got a lot of people to see. So I think there are things, though, I think the NBA has gotten a bit stale with, and I think here's a few things I think where the NBA has kind of lost their way a little bit. I think they've been too dependent on the relationship with ESPN and with TNT. And what I mean by that is that I get it. The guys on Thursday night, TNT guys have had their run, and a lot of people love them for what they do and stuff like that. But are you really trying to get the broadest audience possible? And if you're on TNT, which is a channel, quite honestly, that no one watches unless you're watching the NBA, or in this case, you want to watch, in this case, old Burn Notice episodes, which is a fantastic show, by the way. Good show in this case here when you're folding the clothes, man. Burn Notice. But the fact is, it's not something that's must-see TV when you're going to TNT. And you're not getting the biggest thing, and it's on cable, which is a very important part of this. If you take what the NFL's done, who's actually grown in even though the NFL about 15 years ago had a bit of dip in their numbers, the NFL stuck to the plan of staying on the rabbit ear channels. And as much as like so much cable cuttings happen, there is still some type of value in being on those main stations. Because if you're in certain parts of the country here, in Canada or in the States, where you don't care for cable or you can't get certain channels, you can always pull up the rabbit ears, for kids at home, you don't know is the antenna. In this case, I'm talking about. In this case, to get the channel that we're talking about, your CBS, your ABC, your NBC, and Fox. And right now, NFL is right now the only sports league in this case that is on all those channels. The NBA in this case, I think, has to open up and broaden the discourse and get more channels back involved. So, what I'm proposing is a broadcasting package. I think will work for a few different things. Here's the things I'm trying to do in this case here. One, capture the youth that are watching basketball, but in a different way. Right now, I think they get a lot on highlights and stuff, but I don't think they're really getting the we just talked about a bit offline. I don't think they're really getting the actual enjoyment of watching a full game. So how can you get more of them to get involved in that? Two, just getting more eyeballs on the screens, man. That's and getting your name back in that type of discussion. I think it's okay, but it's not as well as it could be. And then three, of course, in this case here is the growth of the sport itself. So here's what I'm proposing. First thing is, when the deal comes, I want to have and ways and here's what and it also comes to do with scheduling. You'll see why in a second. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get back on NBC, which I think of all the network TVs has done it the best as far as NBA. They found a way to make the games and the Sunday games a big priority. They built them up fantastically. They had a great pregame show, halftime show, sometimes some controversy, which is not necessarily wrong. But I'll get that in a second because I think there's some things that may swing the pendulum a little too far one way. So I would get NBC as a package in this case. And the way I'm looking at setting this up is, okay, fine, we keep ESPN as one package, and you can have I think ESPN technically has a Wednesday and Friday games right now. I would want, if I had it my way, my perfect schedule would be a 3-day schedule for the NBA. Everyone plays on, I guess I had it in this case, plays midweek, say on Wednesdays. I think in this case, I had the other one, in this case here, the second day everyone will play is on a Friday. And then whoever the primetime folks is, they play on be a Saturday or Sunday, depending on where the football schedule is. You can shift them as the season goes. Once the Sundays are opened up, and you can move those to Sundays. In this case here, and that is your schedule moving forward. That's what I think, because what that does is now you make it an event. I think just a year ago when they had the election, they put a policy in place where everybody was off that one day. So they had to play everybody the night before the election in the United States. And every team was playing, and it was like, the games were everywhere, and they had them shifted in time shifts. So it was like if you were 7 o'clock game, 7:30, 8 o'clock. It was almost like watching NCAA basketball, the March Madness, but NBA version of it. Because there were games coming all the time. Twitter was going crazy. It was a cool kind of event from a basketball standpoint. So I think you can create that type of dynamic by having scheduling, say, a Wednesday, a Friday, and then your weekend premier games of the week type of thing. And NBC would have that package for that game. I would give the ESPN game. And you'd say maybe it's Tuesday, Thursday to make it simple. If TNT wants to keep it Thursday night, it's fine. You can have your Thursday night games or Tuesday night games, and everyone does that. And then maybe the weekend games for NBC. Second part, I will also squeeze out a bit of a package, a smaller package for one of those weekday games to have the ability for it to be on one of the streaming networks. Netflix doesn't seem to be interested in being sports. They want to be more sports adjacent. I think I'll get that in a second, where I think that could be helpful. But I think also Amazon seems like they're ready to play big time ball. They're already in the NFL already. Peacock has already got EPL in this case as well, some football stuff. So there's some room there. So there's streaming networks in this case that are possible to kind of go there. I think Amazon would be the place I would look to try to go, because I've seen their NFL coverage and what they do with the cameras and some of the work. They got money to spend on making your game look the best it can be. So that would be my thing with Amazon. As far as Netflix goes, I think there's an opportunity to do almost like a bit of like a Hard Knocks thing with Netflix. How we have the quarterback show right now. They have the F1 show. They have a tennis and golf one. I think people will be very interested considering the type of way how basketball Twitter is. That if you had, even The Last Dance was already kind of a precursor to this. If you had something like that on Netflix, where it's like you're following a particular team that season, can you imagine doing the Golden State Warriors of 2017 or 2018? As like a Hard Knock style through the preseason on Netflix? Oh my gosh, that would be nonstop talk, right? So that's the ways they can kind of find a way to improve, and get the awareness and hit different demographics. So the young people, in this case, like the Netflix stuff, as well as getting them on streaming if they want to pick up that way. You could do some certain ways around the Amazon stuff. And then the networks to get them on network styles. So you can have folks that are mature people that want to get back in the game. They know where to find the games, and everyone knows when to find it. I think they'll create an event. I think one last part of the broadcast I would say is, I think they have to find a way to pull back on their brand a little bit more and be a little more forceful about their brand. I ain't say they gotta be like NFL, which is like as regiment it comes. Thou shalt not say any critical statement about the NFL and the Shield. But I think there is, but the NBA is completely opposite, where it's like, hey, do whatever you want with it. You can stamp on it, rip it up, do whatever. You can't have that. I mean, I know a lot of people enjoy the what they consider to be the openness of the Thursday night guys on TNT. and to some extent what the guys like Van Gundy, those guys did on thing. But I was one of the few people that I was glad in some ways. I don't want anyone to lose their job, but I think it was time for a change when it came to Van Gundy and Mark Jackson, because I think they were not being helpful for the league. You know, you can't keep on coming on there sounding like a curmudgeon and being like, you know, Mr. Wilson, for you kids in this case, Dennis the Menace, and quarreling on about this case about what's wrong with the league. I know I'm going to age myself, but kids go and Google it. You'll know what I'm talking about. You can't be quarreling in this case here about, oh, this is wrong and that's wrong and we could change this. How is anyone having a good viewing experience if the moment you come on the TV and you're watching a game casually and all you hear is the guy ripping on the thing for 2.5 hours? And then you go Thursday night, half the guys on the team in this case, Shaq don't know half the players' names. Bartley's out there talking and all sorts of smack about every play in the league. And I get it. You're going to be critical of guys and stuff like that. But this whole thing, I think one of the reasons why we have this issue about old guys versus the new guys, a lot has to do with these guys. You had your time in the sun. Move stage left and let the new next generation do their thing. And I think I'm actually looking forward to when Bartley retires, to be honest with you, because I think it's kind of gotten a little stale in my mind. At times you get a moment where it's like the old days and boom. But a lot of times with him and Shaq, it's just like, not so much Kenny. I think Kenny finds a nice balance. But the other two, it's just a bit much. And I think if you keep having people berating your sport time and time again, guess what's going to happen? When you're online, the discourse is going to be what it is. I didn't even get the 24/7 guys yet. But that's the reason why. No one will ever speak like that about the NFL and NFL coverage. Never. I watch football all the time. No one's talking like that. And even if they're critical, they're tiptoeing around it a little bit, right? Even in other sports, in this case here, for the most part, hockey doesn't even go that way. Golf, God forbid you say something bad about someone's shoes, man. Holy smokes, they're all over you in this case in golf, right? Tennis, same thing to a lesser extent. And I'm not saying in this case it has to be all cherries and rainbows, but we've gone too far the other way, and it's hurt the brand and it's hurt the league in this case. And that's where I hope in this case that you know that Silver gets a little stern in them and kind of say, hey, dudes, we ain't doing this.
I agree. So I think there's a couple things before we get to Coach's idea. We'll all just discuss this idea first. So the first thing that I'll say is that the one player that you didn't mention, which I think will be very interesting, will be Apple, because I have heard rumblings of them being involved and wanting to get more involved, specifically in this arena. And whenever they do, they don't mess around when they get involved with this stuff. And I think that they would do a good job. You also mentioned the idea of the viewing the teams almost like open gym style. Actually, there's an Amazon show. I don't know the name of it, so I'm very sorry, but it's actually about the Leafs, and it does a similar job. I didn't really watch it because I just don't have the time to watch hockey and basketball to the same extent. But I do think that even other teams have started to kind of spring up their own version of open gym. Obviously, open gym is open gym. They do a really good job. But I think that kind of stuff really makes you feel more, first of all, gives you much better access just from the overall observing experience. You get more interviews, you get to learn more about players. It makes you humanize the people a lot more, which is good too. But yeah, the final thing that I'll say, and then I know Coach will have his own opinions as well, is about the idea. I think that having a standardized schedule in general is probably a good thing. I think it's something that even the WNBA should probably be moving towards as well. I think it's just a lot easier. I know it's tough. You have to fight for those spots, but sometimes, Monday Night Football, right? It'd be nice if you had that kind of thing on, like, this is the game. Like in a sense, it's kind of like the Christmas games for the NBA. I have family members who are not big NBA watchers, but they'll watch it on Christmas. They'll watch the games on Christmas. I mean, and part of it is because it becomes like a tradition. And I think also, just selfishly, it helps me to plan out my week a little bit better too. So, but that goes into it. I'm sure I'm not alone in that. So I definitely, I like the idea. I think it's great. Coach, what are your thoughts? And we'll do your idea next.
I liked your take on the broadcasting aspect. Hubie Brown is my favorite because he really talks about the game, what's going on. He doesn't get into the BS that some of the other broadcasters do, a la Jeff Van Gundy and stuff like that. Sometimes Mark Jackson gets involved a little bit much too, but And then you made your point there about like Shaq not knowing NBA players' names. You know what? Yeah, I think that these analysts, you should know some of these players' names. Like I don't know about his game, or I don't know about what his name is and stuff. That's it's kind of embarrassing. Like when you have fans like us who just watch the game, we love it, and we have someone like Shaq, who is one of the greatest players of all time and stuff like that. But he's in a position of power now, as an analyst, and they're him and Barkley. Some of these guys, like, yeah, they at least should know some of these guys' names. You don't have to know their scouting report to the T, stuff like that. I understand that part, but I think what you're saying is you just want um more excellence in a sense from our self-proclaimed NBA analysts and stuff like that. Like do a better job at kind of what you're doing. And because I've watched some of them say, like, I don't know how to pronounce that guy's name, or I don't know who that is. Well, that's a little disrespectful kind of them and maybe their families who might be watching this right now and stuff like that. That's kind of the way that I view it.
Yeah, to follow
Yeah.
your point, and I just want to go back to something with the streaming, but to your point, it's that part of it you mentioned, it's the unprofessionalism you mentioned, Coach, which then
That's the word I'm looking for. Sorry, yes.
yeah, no problem. But it's like if you're giving that out, it's like no different than any other business. If you're gonna give that out, why, if I'm a viewer, should care about any of these games if you guys don't even care who the players are or what they're doing? Right? That's the tone it gives off. And then the other part was the negativity, where it's like you're kind of always down the players. Because I said before, if you compare it to the NFL and ex players, I seen Randy Moss on there. So it's not like they don't have great players in the NFL doing broadcasting and doing that too. You would never see them not come in not knowing who the third string running back is in this case here for the Jets. They know so these dudes know all that stuff, and they're professional about it. They're not coming out there kind of like lambasting everybody just to kind of like, I don't know what it is, whatever agenda they're set up for. Like it ends up being hurtful for the product when it's all said and done. As far as the streaming goes, Kenyon, it's funny because when I hesitated about Amazon, that's when I knew there's another streaming service. I can't remember. It was Apple, and the Apple part is really interesting because Apple's already done this with MLS. MLS changed their system and changed their schedule to create kind of like a one night of like, we're on Apple and this is what we're doing. So they already kind of shifted to this type of setup. So in a way, my thing is a broadcasting thing, but it's also a scheduling thing. So all the whining about time management and load management, that solves that problem too. And I think when it's done, I think it's something that not only this is a big paradigm shift as far as like it's not just the NBA, but I think obviously in conjunction to your point with arenas, you have to talk the NHL because pretty much most of the league teams in the league share an arena with some NHL teams. So I think that would also help the NHL as well too. So if Sunday night is NBA night, we know what Saturday is, right? Cue the music, CBC, right? So like that would be their night. And you can share the building that way and figure out the concerts from there. But I think it might make things a little simpler and better for both for all leagues involved from the arena schedule standpoint.
Yeah, no, I think all really good points. The streaming thing will be interesting. I know that there was one thing I want to say with Twitter where you could have hooked up. It's almost like you pick who you want. So if people wanted to listen to us, talk about the game, they could do that. There's a lot of neat things that you can do with the streaming standpoint, but I really like the standardization of the schedule. And I agree, just as a Raptors side note, I mean, yeah, I'm critical of the team. I'm critical, of management and stuff like that for sure. I don't hide it. But at the same time, I always try to strike a balance and say this is like, for example, when I did my thing, I did my videos on, Nurse and Masai. I said like, this is the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Like this is the, I talked about the good and positive things, but I also talked about the negative things. Some people like to focus on one over the other. But I do think that in general, we do need a little bit more positivity, yet with, grounded in, reality and being pragmatic, right? I think that's it's tough to strike that balance. I hope we do it on Basketball Rewind. But at the same time, I do understand that it is tough to strike that balance, but I also think that a lot of people don't like to strike that balance. I've seen and even talked to certain content creators that are like, well, this is content, right? Or like they thrive on like that, yeah, it's like that meme, I thrive off negativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's and you see it, and it kind of gets to the point where it's like it's just easy for dunks, and it's like then it's almost like you have from my standpoint, sometimes I actually will have I will converse with people and bring out counterpoints just to be like, have you thought about like this other aspect? I mean, you might be right, but like it seems like you're just, you know, viewing it in one particular manner. So that's the one thing that I hope that improves about future broadcasting. Coach, your idea. Let's hear it up.
So the NBA, I'll give them credit, has done a better job over the last few years of this, but tanking, as you guys know, was a problem there for a good 10, 12 years, especially with the 76ers with their whole the trust the process and stuff
It
like
worked
that.
out, Coach. I don't know. I haven't heard much about
Yeah, still came up with Joel Embiid though, like with Embiid and Simmons, and like it never worked out for them. But I kind of get I feel bad for fans who pay good money, or I feel bad for guys in their prime that have to, sit because we're trying to lose now because we want that generational prospect. I don't really want to reward that anymore. Even though the NBA's done a better job, I still think they can do a better job at that. So, for example, this year, the Pistons, the Rockets, and the Spurs, they all had a 14% chance at the number one pick. We know that towards the end of the season, they weren't really trying too much. Not like they were in the first part of the season. And even a team like Portland had the fifth best odds. Now they moved up in the draft and eventually got Scoot Henderson, but Portland was actually a 500 team until they basically sat Dame down the last month and a half of the year because they were a few games out and like, no, we're done. And the Raptors did this in the Tampa bubble. Same thing. The Raptors they had a game against Washington. Now we're going to sit Lowry. We're going to try to get a higher pick. I just felt bad for Fred and Pascal and OG at that time. It was as if we don't respect your primes right now. We're not going to try to get into the playoffs. So I don't want to reward that kind of, I guess, philosophy anymore. So what I would do if I was Adam Silver for a day is kind of flip the lottery odds to the teams that just missed the playoffs. So the Raptors, the Pelicans, and I think it was the Thunder this year. Okay. They basically had the ninth and 10th seeds, more or less, in their conferences and stuff like that. So I would have them go to the top because they battled hard. They just missed the playoffs. So they were trying, right, towards the end of the year. I especially give credit to a team like the Thunder, as young as they were. The Raptors battled injuries, but they also battled many other things too, as we know. I want to reward that. I want to reward teams that just give effort every night. They're not load managing guys. They're not trying to tank games and throw games and stuff like that. And let's put you at the top of the draft lottery then. I think that would be the final kind of solution in terms of there's going to be no more tanking in this league. Like if you're bad, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to be bad. Now, if you guys start really, do good free agent signings and you draft well, like you could still at that 13th or 14th pick still get a pretty good player. A lot of younger guys are coming into the NBA. This is the best the league has ever been, probably from parity standpoint in the draft. Like a lot of great players are coming into the game right now. But I think if I was Adam Silver for a day, I'd like to try that for a few years to see how it would work. To see a team like Portland with Dame Lillard to say we're going to aim for the playoffs more or less. And if we just miss out, okay, we just miss out. But you know what? At least you tried, and your fans get to see you tried. Right? We're not seeing Dame Lillard sit a month and a half. We're not going to see a team like Detroit with a lot of young players, but we're going to see you guys try to get to the playoffs. And if you miss out in the end of the season, just like that ninth seed, we're going to give you the highest odds now. So if tanking ever becomes a more of an issue like it was for a bit, I would look to do that because all it takes is one generational prospect, and then you got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams all trying to tank. I just think that's a disservice to the fans and it's a disservice to the players on that team who are in their prime.
Hmm.
I'll let Beyond go first. I have some questions about the logistics of things, especially for small markets, but I'll let Beyond go first.
Actually, I'm kind of interested with your small market talk because I just see a lot of big markets at the top of these lists these days. Last I checked the lottery, I don't think Toronto's a small market or Houston is. Like, there's a lot of big markets that are sticking up the joint these days. So, I overall, so you're saying like, so in this case here, I guess it would be, the Raptors were 13th this year. So, I think who's the last lottery pick? Was that?
Yeah, they fit the Raptors technically, even though they played the Bulls in that game.
It
They
was
were the
New
ninth seed, the
Orleans.
Bulls.
Right. Right.
So basically, the two teams that had the number 9 seed, I guess, would have the two highest odds, and then it would go back. So then the 10th seed, you would have the next in each one, that kind of thing. This isn't perfect for the record. I thought about this a little bit, but not a whole lot.
I hear you. So you're saying you reverse the order of the lottery, essentially.
Yes.
The Raptors
To limit tanking.
So this is fascinating. The reason why I say so, I ask that question is that what it also does now, and I think it really now puts the trade deadline on steroids. I think the playing game has already done some of that in the last couple of years. You have that as your as your reward for trying to get in the playoffs. That even if you miss out, you might get a top 5 pick. My gosh, man, you're gonna see trades that you've never seen before, man, trying to get folks to get in there.
But think of this too. Think of Miami. Miami's the perfect example of this.
Yes.
They were the 8th seed. They ended up in the NBA Finals, right? Mm-hmm. So in today's league that has more parity around it, that would work well for a team like Miami. Like if you get the 8th seed, and yes, you make the playoffs, you won't have that draft pick, that high draft pick per se. But I just made the playoffs now, and now I get a chance to move forward with my team. Your team, from a developmental sense, would get better if you're making the playoffs. That is
okay. So let's take my beloved Mavericks, for example, last season. In the scenario you're talking about, it would be more ideal for us to do exactly what we did. Then we would, we could potentially have a shot Wemby.
Yeah, they would have the 5th best odds, roughly.
So I guess I'm wondering, are you encouraging teams in this case, or kind of like at the bottom of the playoffs, to slide out?
That's the question. No, but that's an interesting question, right? Because it's like, do I take Wemby or do I make the playoffs? I got Luka Doncic on my team. What do you think you should do?
Wow.
The other thing too is that are you more incentivized to trade your pick, because if for a Masai you do the status quo, right? But for everyone else, it's like like you said, do you make a minor move? Do you use your pick that year to make the move? Because that's tough, because you could, like you said, you could see a lot of teams that are on the cusp really go for it using their picks.
Oh, the competition would get better. That's for sure.
Well, I'm looking at the other way. If you're a team that's kind of struggling right now, you don't think you're going anywhere, you have a prime player like Luka in the Dallas situation. It doesn't happen often, but it might be wise to do exactly what Dallas did. Just slide out of the playoff mix, so you get the top 5 pick. And then
you're just saying, like, forget about the top whatever, but just you just shift the tanking to the top. You just get a top 5.
Right, to that layer just above the playoffs, right? Because if I'm Dallas, I already have a marquee franchise level player.
Right, and then you just wait for a deeper draft like this one, where you're like, okay, I don't care if I'm like, I don't care if I'm, it'd be nice to get one, but the odds are the odds, so I'll just take top 5. Anything there, I'm fine.
Right, and now I'm playing with Luka with a top 5 pick. Now it's not the worst thing. I don't get me wrong. I kind of like it overall because I think the other side of it, for every Dallas there is in this case a New Orleans that would that's going to want to get in, right? Like they're fighting to get in. So I can see it both ways, but I don't think overall I do like it because I still think it incentivizes you to be in the mix, and wherever the case may be, everyone's at least trying to raise their ceiling, and I think that's important. So overall I kind of like the idea in this case here.
It makes trading for stars different too.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about it, it's like if you're trading for, say, KD, and before you were giving up, how you were giving up your picks or whatever, or sometimes those pick swaps may look different now.
Mm-hmm.
Because now it's like, okay, well, I mean, obviously I think you're more focusing on like the play and down, but still it's like a team that might be on the cusp, right? Might be the team that's like, okay, well, we'll trade for a KD or, a Dame, and they might make those moves and do more pick swaps, and those pick swaps get a lot more interesting.
Well, for example, take Miami. They're the perfect team for this, right? And say it was last year, and say they don't get in the playoffs, but say during the season, the Dame trade might have been available then, behind closed doors. Would have been better for Miami to say, you know what, we'll ride this out. Worst comes to worst, we get top 5 pick, top 6 pick.
Right, then it's easier to trade for Dame.
And then we do trade for Dame. So in some ways, it freezes the market a little bit for teams in that middle area, where it's like, why am I making a deal for that when I can just hold out? Especially the only type of team it works out for in that sense to make a trade for a star is if you have older stars, in this case like the Lakers, and you're going all in, going for broke. But if you have any young type of stars, youngish type stars for the most part, like, why am I risking in this case to trade all of that for Dame when I just ride out one season and get myself a top 5, top 6 pick?
Does it lead to more parity? That's I guess the final question on this one.
Well, how much more parity do we need? I mean, the league's we got a lot of parity right now.
No, I'm just kidding.
Right. This decade essentially is like the 1970s.
Yeah.
Where you have one team winning every championship. There's no 2 in a row, 3 or 4 years. No one's established themselves in this decade so far as a franchise or a dynasty yet. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Sorry, Nuggets fans. I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I do think like this maybe was an option 6 or 7 years ago before they changed the draft lottery odds and stuff like that. Like when Philly was just getting the number 1, number 2, number 1 picks and stuff like that. When Sam Hinkie literally said we are going to do this and trade away Michael Carter Williams Rookie of the Year so we can get more picks and stuff like that. Like I just found that such a disservice to the fan base and the players on their team. But if you were to change that around the lottery odds, like, no, we're going to reward the team that really tried hard to make the playoffs.
So let me ask you, how's my favorite president of basketball operations, Sam Presti, handle this situation?
I was going to say him and Danny Ainge. That would be interesting.
He would. Well, Sam Presti in this draft would have had Scoot Henderson probably. Well, depending on the odds and stuff like that, but yeah, he. Well, actually, they had 1.7% chance of getting that number 1 pick, and the Raptors had the 1% chance. So technically, the Thunder had more odds of getting that pick than the Raptors.
Yep.
So, Sam Presti probably would have absolutely loved it for this draft.
Yeah,
Messiah would have too.
You almost got to ask, how do tiebreakers work out in that case? Because do they? True. That's true. Because it's like usually a tiebreaker you want to move up, but now it's like, okay, do you want to lose? You know what I mean? It's like there's a weird. I might be overthinking it, but it's interesting.
Like the Mavericks did that to get back their pick. I mean,
yeah.
Well, they said, "Oh, we're gonna lose. Don't worry about it. We're getting our pick back."
when Coach was describing this is I think it was you or Coach mentioned Portland. I was thinking of the Mavs. In terms of
they're another team too. Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. I and Coach, don't apologize for, I know you said you didn't do much thinking into this idea, I thought it invoked a good discussion personally.
Well,
Um,
you guys brought other elements I never thought about, like the trade deadline. It would be the trade deadline steroids. Like, how many people love the trade deadline in the NBA? It's crazy. Like, we had a crazy one last year with Durant going one way, and I know in the Raptors, since they got Pirtle, we expected more from the Raptors. They did not, but we've had some trade deadlines where, like, I think James Harden went to Philly one trade deadline and stuff like that.
yep.
So imagine if you had things like that. And like, yes, I think there would be more parity, but like you guys said, I think the league's in a pretty good spot right now when it comes to parity. Miami Heat showed that throughout the playoffs when you had an 8th seed go to the NBA Finals, and kind of do what they did. So
The Lakers were a 7 seed.
they sixth or seventh, were they?
I think Golden State was a 6 seed. I think they were a 7 seed. Lakers. But it's funny because in the scenario you're talking about, last year the Blazers would have been buyers instead of sellers, probably. Instead of shipping Dame, they probably would have been saying, "Oh man, let's go for it to try to get up into this playing game."
Yep.
So I have two ideas. One is a little bit easier, so we'll just get that one out of the way really easily. Which is G League rights being stricter. I think I don't know how the commissioner, if I believe they might have a separate commissioner for the G League, but if there was a way to give teams more rights for longer term over their G League counterparts, I think that would be great. I think that there's from a Raptor standpoint, Saban Lee is one that comes to mind as someone that would have been nice to have rights over him for longer. Now from a player standpoint, they probably don't want that for multiple reasons, and I we don't have now, but I get it. But that's the one thing from like I guess a policy standpoint. There's another thing that I'll bring up right away, just because they're super quick, doesn't need a lot of explaining, which is I would just simply, I mean, you see how people are freaking out about this player and trying to attach and project how a player behaves based on them being in a contract year. I think the easiest thing to do is just uncouple the awards from the money. I'm surprised that they didn't do it for the CBA. I think that that's just the easiest thing. I don't need to go into I mean, you don't get what you deserve in life. You get what you have the leverage to negotiate. And at the end of the day, I think that the best players are going to get the best money either way. But I think when you get to these things where their contract or whether they're X type of player is completely associated with awards, it just makes for a weird fan watching experience. For example, I think Pascal Siakam's going to do really well this year. But a lot of people will say, "Oh, he's only going to do well because he's a selfish player," and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the case. I don't think that I can necessarily attribute those things to. We don't need to talk about that side of things, but yeah, I think it would just make it much easier to kind of remove that dialogue from the discourse of basketball. Thoughts?
Well, a strange dynamics playing out. Actually, you mentioned it with fandom in this case here. I think actually with front offices and the player. I think a lot of front offices whisper say, "I don't want my player actually to make all NBA, for example. So therefore, I have to pay him that." If you're considered to be a fringe all NBA player, I'm sure Boston last year did not want Jaylen Brown in this case to do that well. Force their hand how much money they had to pay him. Now they probably will never tell you that, but I'm sure if you gave him some truth serum, they probably didn't like that. I don't think. To your point, I think it creates a strange tension between front office and player, where in theory, you should be celebrating like, "Hey, man, look at our guy. He made all NBA. Yay, let's promote him to be NBA." Now, fascinating to see what plays out this year in Toronto, right? That if Siakam's on this team and he's doing well like he does the Siakam stuff and the team's actually half decent, how much promotion do the Raptors say they're going to push for him to be all NBA? That will be fascinating. And we're going to find out a lot about what this team really thinks about their star player, right? These are the type of things that, because of what you're talking about, creates this type of dynamic. The other element, I will go one step further to you. I will, as much as I like to ride the media in this case here, I really don't like the media being involved in this case when it comes to making the decisions of who actually is going to be on these teams, which then plays in your part about who actually gets the money. We have the Klay Thompson situation. That was, we won't go through it already, but it just ends up making everything very awkward across the board. If we can't have some type of board or somehow, I don't know who it could be that could actually look into it. Maybe, maybe it's some type of executives, but not executives are high level. Maybe it's scouts. They don't really have any skin in the game, really. Maybe they're the best people to pick. I don't know. But someone that's watching the players and stuff like that and pick amongst the different players. Say you bring it down to a pool of these guys and say, hey, pick from this group. The media can at least do that part. Here's the group. Here, special board, pick your group in this case here. And get it out in the hands of the media, which then, to your point, gets out having the contracts tied to that as well, too. So that's my thoughts on that part. I don't know the G League stuff. I can't help you, man. It sounds pretty good.
I just think how the small market teams can really feel the crunch of what you said about the all NBA teams, stuff like that. Let's just say Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was in a contract year and he made the all NBA team the year before. And if he makes it this year, he gets that supermax. OKC didn't even want to pay Harden the max all those years ago. So, a team like OKC, would they be able to go and do that? I'm sure, the executives or the GMs of those teams, it's not their money. It's the owner's money that you're doing that with. I'm sure they would want to do that, but then kind of there comes that tension there if you have an ownership group that doesn't want to pay that kind of money. So as a fan now, let's just say I'm a fan of OKC. Of course, I love Shea. It's almost like, Shea, I want you to have a good year, but I don't want you to have too good of a year because I'm scared you're going to get the supermax.
Well,
and
Coach,
the organization can't afford the supermax.
This is where this is where things are going to get very dicey. We brought this up in space already, and folks were sitting there, oh, that would never happen. We now have a limit on how many games you have to play. And that's going to come in. I don't know, but I swear a lawsuit's going to come. At some point, a lawsuit's going to come. Someone's going to get screwed over.
It may not be Raptors related either, but sometime this season, someone's not going to be happy.
Yeah. Somebody, and in that SGA one, and knowing how OKC is already, there are scenarios I could easily see where someone says, you know what? No, you're really not healthy. The players say, I feel fine. No.
Yeah.
Our people say in this case, you rested a week or so, and the clock's ticking on the games. And he's looking there going, I feel fine.
Right. How's your back feeling?
Yeah, exactly. Trust me when I say
fine. How's your back feeling?
Right. Some lawsuits with the union. It's going to get ugly. I'm telling you now, I don't know who's going to be the first one's going to strike it, but somebody in some team that's going to pop up before the season's up.
This is going to be medical clearance. Well, you weren't cleared by the team's doctors.
Right.
And that could be interesting because it's like, well, my doctor said that I'm good. It's almost the reverse of the Kawhi situation.
Right.
Right? Whereas...
Exactly.
Right, where it's like we say you're good. It's like, well, my guy says I'm not good. It's like, what happens if your guy says that I'm good, and then and then from a standpoint of, because I know this goes way down a rabbit hole, but there's insurance that plays into this. How does insurance react? Because that who is liable? But that's a whole. I don't think our viewers are interested in talking about insurance liabilities.
Has a lot of that stuff going on, right? Where a guy needs X amount of yardage to get bonuses, and then just amazing. All of a sudden, in this case, he can't play that last game of the season. Amazing how that happens.
It'll be interesting, Coach.
No, I was just thinking too. I'm taking this from a fan standpoint. It's almost like you're telling us, I want to root for you, but I can't root for you to get the supermax. Because that difference between the max and the supermax, if you get, could be the difference of us getting another free agent to help our team. But if you get the supermax, we can't go get that free agent. I know that sounds, it's a little, I don't know the word I'm looking for. It's not probably as simplistic as what I'm saying. But, if you're a team, if you're someone that really follows the cap and stuff like that, and if if they're really crunching numbers here and stuff like that, it gets very interesting for sure.
Yeah, and this course is already happening amongst the Raptor fans already.
Right? Yeah, I mean, I always say this. It's like, and this is to both Scotty and Pascal fans because they seem to be split for whatever reason. Um, if you're thinking of like Pascal Siakam and he's not worth this, or I would only sign him if he only accepted $30 million a year, I've heard just stuff like that. Keep that in mind when Scotty Barnes is up if you're a Scotty fan, because you're gonna have the same conversation potentially in reverse, or if you're an OG fan, same kind of thing. It's an interesting conversation, but people don't pocket watch. I think that these players work very hard, and again, you don't get what you deserve. You have the leverage to you get what you have the leverage to negotiate. The end of the day, yes, of course, teachers and doctors and firemen and all those people should be paid more. Another discussion for another day on Basketball Rewind, of course. But what I will say is, again, to just bring it all full circle, is I think the easiest thing that they can do is start uncoupling the money. I think that, and honestly, there's ways to make it easier for the teams to also increase loyalty. So, for example, one of the things that I thought of actually bringing up today, we don't have to discuss it, but it was the idea of almost like a like whoever gets the franchise tag, you have to be on a team for X amount of time, and when you have that tag, it gives, if as long as the player stays with that team, it gives the team like kind of their extra salary doesn't count against the tax in the same way. That would be interesting because I think that that would kind of encourage it, and you could do that away from rewards. But if they get traded, of course, then the hit is the hit, and the hit will not count in the same way. So that could be interesting, although it may not encourage the trade for frenzy that Coach's idea would. Coach,
Do you guys feel like I feel like as much parity as there's in the league, I feel like amongst contracts, there's not that much parity. Like it's like you got max and super max players, and you got like a lot of minimum players. That's what I'm kind of noticing now. It's like whatever's in between there, that gap seems to be shortened or seems to be getting bigger, or I'm sorry, shortening. Seems just more like the I don't know if you guys notice that as well.
typical American fashion, the income inequality is growing. Um,
That's what it feels like amongst
yeah.
contract. It's like, yes, players are getting paid the most they've ever been paid, but then you still got guys out there
Yep.
like, a Kelly Oubre or a PJ Washington. I don't consider them minimum type players, even though, sorry, PJ Washington just signed, but I don't consider Kelly Oubre a minimum type player. He's pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think this last CBA actually made that exasperated that situation.
Mm.
I don't know if the union intended it for that be, but it's like everything else. You got to
No.
give and take in certain other areas. So maybe that's where they thought they could take. Maybe I think the mindset they're thinking of, it might pay off in the long run. It's funny because I think my topic impacts all these discussions in this case, because if the money's right, hey, everything's gonna be all right in this case here. So
Yeah,
when
because
that,
if let's say a minimum is like a $10 million contract in the future, which is very possible that that could
right,
happen, then it's
right,
like, oh, okay, like so I'm making the minimum. I'm fine making $10 million.
right. It's a $75 billion contract for TV. It's amazing what mid range guy's gonna make at this point, right? Like Gary Trent Jr. What he's gonna make. He's gonna be all right. Like put that way, he's still gonna be all right.
Yeah, I mean, in 10 years, I'm telling you guys right now, the average bench player, don't be surprised if they're making 25, $30 million. That's going to be like a good, solid rotation bench player. A mid-level exception is going to be 20 million within the next 5 years.
Yeah,
I can see that. Yep.
yeah. So I think
Mhm.
that's what they're. I think that's why I think it's part of the mindset the union's banking on, that money's still going to roll in, and especially with this contract, the TV contract. As
Yeah.
it always says, there's that forgotten money, the gambling money, and the revenue from that.
Yes.
So that is also starting to pick up now. And I think between those two items, they figure, hey man, we can deal with this in this case. If there's only two big stars that make all the quote money in theory, but no one's crying poor, as you said before, if a bench guy's making 12 million a year. Right?
No, 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 not at all. And it might make it easier to get negotiate contracts and stuff like that as well because again, instead of saying, oh well, this team is really obviously it's still gonna factor in because if a team is really able to give you, not just $20 million per year, but they're able to give you lots more money than that. Fair enough. But there's a lot more guys that are like, I mean, I $10 million a year, and they might be more than willing to go.
Exactly, and we don't know exactly with the influx of these revenues streams how it impacts the cap, right?
No, all we know is that for this CBA right now, until the next one, they've capped it at 10% increases. But we know that there's going to be more money that's going to be coming in than that. So at some point, and also we know that the league owes the players because they put some money away in escrow for the COVID year. And so it's going to grow, simply put.
Mm-hmm.
So the NBA is in a good spot then.
Oh, healthy league financially.
When you're talking, and we haven't talked about expansion.
That's. I mean, one of these days, I think we will have a conversation about who would you protect in an expansion if you could only protect 3 guys or 4 guys or something like that, and we can go down the different teams and pick.
Right through everybody. Holy smokes!
Oh, yes. I like that.
I go through Charlotte. Seriously, I go through that roster.
Absolutely. So we'll find a way to pick that as fun, because I think once you get to like 7, 8 guys, and it's like okay, but if you can protect less guys, that's very interesting. So, for example, like a Portland, if you could protect 4 guys, I mean, you kind of know who they are, but yeah,
they give that much. I think they would probably. I think
they'd have more. It'd probably be like 7, 8 guys, but like just for the conversation, I think it'd be more fun to do less.
Teams where it's like some really good players to be sitting out there, like like dang, it's like DeAndre Ayton in this case is out for expansion. Like what are we talking about? Like,
hey, that's a very good example of a team where it's like like. Hey, you got to make your choices. So, with that being said, it's been great conversations with you guys as always. A basketball rewind, and yeah, that's it, everyone. If you have your thoughts, if you have something that we haven't discussed in terms of you wanting to be Adam Silver for a day, or maybe you did become Adam Silver for a day and you want to talk about your idea, definitely put it in the comments down below. Give me your thoughts. Subscribe, so that we can continue to grow this show. And like I said, once I reach, I think it's 500, and I have the viewing hours, which I'm pretty close for that. Well, guess what? I will probably be considering putting an audio side of this podcast, because people keep asking me. I just, until I'm monetized, not going to do it. So with that being said, it's been fun, and take care, everyone, and peace.